on the passing away, the rihlat of the noble Prophet and Messenger of Allah, Prophet of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tonight's topic is about proof, is about hujjah. When the Prophet of Allah was sick and he was lying down, the tradition says that he requested for a pen and paper to write down some instruction. So that someone said, amongst them said that no, maybe the Prophet is just sick and he's not sure what he's saying. Maybe he's delusional or delirious. Other people who were there, who were present, began to kind of argue with one another. So it says in this tradition that the Prophet requested them to leave, that since they were arguing that their presence would not be of benefit, then he asked them to leave. In Nahjul Balagha, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he talks about the final moments with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says that when the people left, he laid and his head was on my chest. And he was holding the Prophet of Allah. He says that when his soul departed from his body, that he took his hand and he rubbed his face for blessings and barakat. He says that everything at that time began to weep and began to lament. It began to do azab, began to mourn. He said even the walls of the home, the angels, everyone and everything began to mourn at this time. The Prophet of Allah, Imam Ali alayhi salam, explains that the angels came. He said, I had the responsibility of washing the body. And the angels came. And he said that so many of them were coming down that it was an amazing sight to see so many coming down after another. And they would pray the prayer of the person who's deceased, and they would leave. And it says others will come in their place. And they would leave, and others will come in their place. We have a tradition that the most thing that Allah created of all creatures were angels. And more than anything else, and think about how many people exist in the world. How many people Allah has created. And it says the most thing that He has created is angels. So there's 8 billion people in the world, however billions of people from the dawn of time. And He says the most thing that He has created was angels. And this is why Imam Ali is saying that there is such an incredible presence of angels coming and leaving, just making their prayer of the deceased for the Prophet of Allah and going away until the time that he was buried. He said it was so many angels that I could hear their voices and their prayer, their dhikr and their words. And he said, so until we buried the Prophet of Allah. And in this point of this tradition in Nahjul Balagha, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, so who was closer to him than me? And who was more worthy to succeed him than me? Dar Nahjul Balagha, Imam Ali alayhi salam وضعیت رحلت پیامبر رو توضیح میدن. فرمودن که پیامبر کاغذ، قلم خواست یه دستوراتی رو برای ملت اسلام بنویسن که یکی از افرادی که اونجا بودن گفتن نه، به نظر میرسه که این هزیونه، به نظر میرسه که مریضه، متوجه نیست خودش که چی دارد میگه. و بین اصحاب اختلاف شد. عده‌ای گفتن که کاغذ بیار، عده‌ای گفتن نه لازم نیست. و پیامبر از اونها خواست که اونها خونه رو ترک کنن. امام علی علیه السلام پیش پیامبر بود و در این روایت در نهج البلاغه می‌فرماید که پیامبر رو در آغوش گرفتن. پیامبر به شدت مریض بود و می‌فرماید چون از دنیا رفت دستم رو صورتم گذاشتم و مالیدم که برکت دستم که روی پیامبر بود به اون نورانیت رو به صورت خودم بمانم. امام علی فرمود که مسئولیت شستن بدن بر من بود و در آن حال ملائکه اومدن و من رو کمک کردن و بعد از اون دیدم که ملائکه بسیاری اومدن و دارن نماز میخونن، نماز میت رو اقامه میکنن و برمیگردن به آسمون. فرمود انقدر جمع زیاد بود از فرشتگان که تا نماز میتشون رو میخوندن اونها دوباره برمیگشتن به آسمون، عده دیگری میومدن در جاشون. فرمود که انقدر جمع زیادی بود من صداهاشون رو همه میشنیدم. تا زمانی رسید که پیامبر رو دفن کردیم و میفرماید که با توجه به این وضع و این اتفاقات چه کسی نزدیکتر از من بود به پیامبر اکرم و چه کسی مستحق‌تر به جانشینی پیامبر بود. خود امیرالمؤمنین سوال رو مطرح می‌کنه، جوابش بالاخره واضح است. ما برای شناخت این شخصیت‌های بزرگ و مهم یه چند نقطه راجع به هر کدوم از اینها امشب پیامبر اکرم، امام رضا علیه السلام و امام حسن مجتبی علیه السلام مختصری درباره اینها مطرح میکنیم تا وارد بحث بشیم. فکر کردم در مورد اینکه موضوعی که این سه شخص رو در عبارت هم که اومده در احادیث، در روایات به اصطلاح وجه مشترکی ما بتونیم ارائه بدیم و اون همین بحث حجت است که هر کدومشون حجت بر روی زمین بودن، حجت زمان خودشون بودن. پیامبر حجت امت اسلام بود و حجت این عالم هم بود. امام رضا علیه السلام که امیدوارم هر کدومتون مشرف شده باشین به مشهد و توفیق زیارت این حضرت و سایر ائمه مطهر رو داشتین یا مکرر داشته باشین و در اون فرصت ها حتما اونایی که دستشون نمیرسه یا اونایی که مستضعف هستن رو هم یاد کنیم. در حیات امام رضا علیه السلام خلیفه اون زمان آدمی بسیار حیله‌گر بود و خواست که امام رضا رو به شهر دیگری ببرن و تبعیدش کنن. در این سفر که عده‌ای رو هم همراه ایشون فرستادن که ایشون رو به اون مقصد برسونن، در روایات به نظر میرسد شهرهای جنوب ایران مانند خرمشهر و اون قسمت هم رد کردن. در هر صورت اهواز و امثال اینها به شهری رسیدن و اونجا جمع زیادی دور امام رو گرفتن، دور اسب امام رو گرفتن. خوشحال بودن. شما فرض کنید که امام زمان از این خیابون‌ها عبور کنه و فرصتی داشته باشید که خدمتش برسید. عظمت امام رو اینها شنیده بودن و توفیقی شد که به اون دهی که رسید برای مردمای اونا، برای اون مردم‌ها که خدمت امام برسن و رفتن خدمت امام رضا. توی احادیث جمع زیادی ذکر شده که اومدن و از جا گفتن بالای 100,000 نفر اونجا جمع شدن. خواستن که امام رضا حدیثی رو بیان کنه و اون حدیث معروف سلسله الذهب رو ایشون اونجا بیان میکنه که میفرماید که من از امام کاظم نقل میکنم، که از امام صادق نقل میکنم، که از امام باقر نقل میکنم، که از امام سجاد نقل میکند، که از امام حسین نقل میکند که ایشون مستقیما از پیامبر نقل کرده و پیامبر از جبرائیل شنیده. این کلام الله، این حدیث قدسی. سلسله الذهب به معنای این زنجیر طلایی که راوی‌ها همه معصوم بودن و حدیث از خداست. و در این حدیث خدا میفرماید راه موفقیت و رسیدن به بهشت و امن بودن از بلاها و عذاب الهی. و امام این رو نقل می کند. پس از نقل کردنش برای مردم توضیح می دهد که به شرطها و شروطها و انا من شروطها، این شرط و شروط دارد و خود امام یکی از اون شروط هست. اطاعت امر امام خودش یکی از راه‌های موفقیت است، چرا که امام حجت است، حجت برای تمام انسان‌ها، حجت برای تمام عالم، نه فقط برای حتی مسلمان. Imam Reza alayhi salam, when he was exiled, he was traveling from Medina with a caravan that was assigned to him. This caravan takes him along a path and he passed through many villages. In one of the villages that they stop at, the Imam is sitting in the carriage of the horse and he is asked by the people, please tell us a hadith. Tell us one narration. And he tells a narration, and he explains a famous narration that's called the golden chain, or Silsilat al-Dhahab, where he explains that this is a tradition that I heard from my father, Imam Qadir, who heard from his father, Imam Sadiq, who heard from his father, Imam Baqir, who heard from his father, Imam Sajjad, who heard from his father, Imam Husayn, who heard directly from the Prophet of Allah, who heard from Jibreel, who was told by Allah that whoso says these Quranic verses will enter paradise, and they'll be safe from Allah's wrath. And the people were excited. But then he explained, but this has its conditions. And I myself am one of those conditions. The Imam himself, obedience to him, is one of those conditions of entering into paradise and into Jannah. About Imam Hassan alayhi salam, there's different traditions that some on the 7th of Safar and some on the 28th of Safar mark his martyrdom. And there's a lot of interesting things to say about Imam Hassan, but I would like to look a little bit differently. Let's look at some of the words of those people who were companions of that time, and and some of the Ahl Sunnah scholars. I had compiled a lot. There's about 4 or 5 different Sunni scholars that spoke about Imam Hassan being so virtuous. Which I don't want to, for the sake of time, I won't go into all of them, but I will read one of them. But 2 other incidents of companions that spoke about Imam Hassan. It says that Marwan, which you have heard about in the history, he came to the funeral of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and he was crying there. He was weeping. And Imam Hassan, he says to Marwan, you are crying and you inflicted so much difficulty and pain on my brother, on the Imam. And now you're crying? And Marwan continued to cry, and he says that he accepts that that's a true statement, that he was inflicting pain upon the Imam. But he says, and he was the most tolerant human being and the most patient human being, more patient than that. And he says that, he points to a mountain, saying that Imam Hassan was more patient, more tolerant than this mountain that you see right here. Even those people who did not do good to the Imams. You know, it's very interesting the kind of character that a Hujjat has, that even people who do wrong to them, they suffer a serious kind of guilty conscience. And what he says to Imam Hussein. It says in another place that one companion, Muawiyah says to one of the companions, that, did you hear that Imam Hassan has died? And he says, yes, and it's Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he was sad about it. And Muawiyah, who was happy, said, do you think that this is some kind of tragedy? And he responds to him saying that, to Muawiyah, he says that I saw the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, saying that this one, meaning Imam Hussein, is for Ali, and this one is for me, meaning Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He said, of course that I feel that this is a tragedy. When the Prophet loved him, and he said that this is for me, and it's a great loss. He said, I feel that it's a tremendous tragedy. And finally, there was one of the Sunni scholars, about Imam Hassan. He talks about how he would deal with people. Ibn Sabaq al-Maliki, he writes that Imam Hassan would sit in Masjid al-Nabi. He would sit in Masjid al-Nabi, and the people would come to him, and he would teach them and educate them. And they had questions, he would answer them in such a way until they were satisfied, their thirst was satisfied. They came, they needed an answer, they had a misunderstanding, whatever the case was, he made sure that they left feeling content with their answer. He said sometimes the people that came to argue with him, some people that didn't come to learn. He said the people that came to argue with him, they would leave feeling satisfied with the proof and evidence that he would provide for them. Even he himself is a hujjah, but when he's speaking to people, he provides proof. He doesn't just say it's because I said so, I'm the hujjah, you should just accept what I say. He provides them evidence and proof for the people who didn't accept. It says even those people, this Sunni alim is explaining that they would leave and they would be content in their explanation and his argument that he gave to them. They wouldn't leave angry, they wouldn't leave upset. They would leave with a little bit more respect and love for the Ahl Bayt alayhi wassalam. Salawat. در مورد امام حسن علیه السلام چند نکته مختصر عرض می‌کنم. در مورد امام حسن علمای اهل تسنن مختلف به عبارت مختلف همه فرمودن که آدم زاهد با تقوا و با ایمان بوده است. همونجوری که ما در روایات خودمون داریم که ازهد زمانه بین مردم اون زمان زاهدترین مردم زمان خودش بود که حتی در یک روایت می‌فرمایند که امام حسن علیه السلام زمانی که نماز می‌خوند بکا می‌گریست، چندان گریه می‌کرد می‌فرمایند که بدنش می‌لرزید. میگفت گاهی که قیامت ذکر می‌شد از ناله می‌کرد، یه آه و ناله می‌کشید و از حال می‌رفت. زمانی که حج می‌رفت می‌فرماید که اکثر موقع‌ها پیاده می‌رفت و چه بسا خیلی از مواقع پا برهنه می‌رفت. این امام حسن در عبادت ما چندان نمازمون گزارا میخونیم که با این توجه میفرمایند که زمانی که می ایستاد روبروی خدا بدنش میلرزید. یکی جمعی آمدن خدمت آیت البهجت که فرمودن که یک حدیثی، یک ذکری به ما یاد بده که ایشون فرمودن که هیچ کتابی ذکری نیاز ندارید، فقط نیاز دارید به این که متوجه بشید ان الله یرا، که خدا میبیند، خدا آگاه هست. اگر از خدا میترسید سراغ گناه نمیرید. ایشون هم خودش شخصیتی بوده که در نماز صداش میلرزید هنگام گفتن سوره ها و ذکرها. امام حسن این چنین بود و محبوب شد بین مردم. یکی از اصحاب معاویه بهش می‌فرماید که امام حسین کشته شد، شنیدی؟ شون فرمود که بله، یعنی با تأسف شون با خدای خودش برگشت. معاویه با غرور و استکبار خطاب میکند و میگه این مصیبته. خب بالاخره ایشون خوشحال بود که امام حسن از دنیا رفتن، شهید شدن. این مصیبته. بعد این شخص جواب داد که خب وقتی من دیدم پیامبر اکرم فرمود که این یکی برای علی یعنی امام حسین و این یکی یعنی امام حسن برای من، پس بله این مصیبت است. بله این مصیبت است. مروان در تشییع جنازه امام حسن علیه السلام حاضر شد و گریه میکرد. چنان گریه میکرد امام حسین بهش خطاب کرد و گفت تو گریه میکنی در حالی که تو باعث این درد سرا شدی، تو که یکی از عوامل این درد سرا شدی یا تو اذیت میکردی این امام رو. و چنان که داشت گریه میکرد مروان به امام حسین خطاب میکنند، میفرمایند و ایشون بعد درست من چنان ایشون رو اذیت میکردم و ایشون رو صابر و با تحمل پیدا کردم مثل این، و اشاره میکند به یک کوه. در یکی از گفته های علمای اهل تسنن درباره امام حسن گفتن که امام حسن علیه السلام در مسجد نبی می نشست و هر کسی سوالی داشت می اومد پیشش و جوابش رو میداد. اونایی که میخواستن چیزی یاد بگیرن و تشنه علم بودن تشنگیشون برطرف میشه و قانع میشدن از هر جوابی که امام میداد. و اونایی که میخواستن به نیت دعوا و جدال و جر و بحث خدمت امام اومدن، امام همچنان با اونها با مدرک صحبت میکرد که اونها هم قانع میرفتن از نزد امام. این از این سه شخصیت بزرگ که ما این مجلس رو تقدیم اونها میکنیم. و اما این بحث حجت چیست؟ در قرآن چند بار اومده است؟ ما امام عصر خودمون رو حجت ابن حسن میدونیم، حجت خدا روی زمین میدونیم. و چه نیاز هست که حجتی باشد؟ ببینیم ما خدا رو عادل میدونیم و ما میدونیم که این خدای عادل انسان رو با اختیار آفرید. انسان میتواند کار خیر انجام بدهد، میتواند کار شر انجام بدهد. اختیار به دست انسان هست. حالا با توجه که این انسان رو با اختیار آفرید عدل الهی اقتضا می کند که یک هادی و راهنما هم باشه. یک کسی باشه که این انسان با اختیار را به سمت به راه راست، به صراط مستقیم هدایت کنه. بالاخره نمیشه که انسان از عدل الهی دور است که خدا انسان را بیافرید بعد به حال خودش رهاش کنه، انشالله کار خیر انجام بده. بالاخره باید یک مصداقی باشه، این همون حجت برای انسان هاست. وگرنه روز قیامت خدا میتونه شخصی رو مؤاخذه کند، این در شأن خدا هست که شخصی رو مؤاخذه کند در حالی که این شخص حجتی براش تمام نشده باشه، حجتی نبود براش. بله، این از عدل الهی دور است. پس لازمش این است که خدا هادی رو زمین بگذاره که اون همون پیامبرها هستن و همون امامان ما هستن که حجت انسان ها هستن، راهی هستن که انسان رو به کمال برسونن. ببینید یه لحظه فرض کنید دین وجود نداره، هیچ دینی وجود نداره، نه اسلامی هست نه مسیحیت نه هیچ دینی وجود. اگر بر چنین فرضی و در فلسفه میگن فرض محال نیست، میشه فرض کرد با اینکه هیچ وقت چنین چیزی نخواهد بود، میشه باید فرض کنیم که هیچ کسی هیچ دین خاصی نداشت. اگر کسی جان یک شخص بیگناه رو گرفت یا اون شخص رو کشت، همه انسان ها متوجه می شدن که این کار اشتباه است. اگر شخصی مال داشت و شخص دیگری اون رو به زور ازش گرفت، می گفتن این کار اشتباه است. در فطرت و ذات انسان بالاخره تا یک حدی یک اموری رو متوجه هست، منتها این خود این امور این خودش یک نوع حجت است که این عقل و این به قول امام کاظم یک حجت باطنی هست، یک حجت ظاهری، که ما حجت ظاهری هستیم و عقول و عقل حجت باطنی است. این چیزایی هست که خدا در عقل و در جان انسان نهاده است که متوجه این امورش. برای اون چیزهای دیگه و اون جزئیاتی که ایشون متوجه نشه، خدا راهنمایی گذاشته که اون به کمال برسونه. پس این از اصل نیاز به حجت روی زمین. So there has to be a proof in this world, meaning that we believe God is just, He's fair. God created man, He created a human being. He said, you, man, you have free will. You can do good things, you can do bad things. You can choose to tell the truth, you can choose to lie. You can choose to be a good person, you can choose to be a bad person. I give you this choice. I give you what makes you greater than angels. Choice. And this will. It's not that angels don't completely have choice, but they also don't have these desires. A desire to be, for maqam, for position or status. A desire for lust. They don't have this inclination. So man who has this, if he overcomes this, then he can be the greatest of creatures. So Allah says, now I've given you this choice. Now that I've given you this choice to be able to do good and bad, I give you an example and a guide for you. And sometimes people say, well, isn't the Quran enough? Isn't the book of Allah enough for us? Allah gave us this book and so we have guidance. But what is the book of guidance without the example of the book of guidance? What if we have a book to guide us, but we don't have any idea what is that supposed to look like. It says to pray. What is an example of prayer supposed to look like? It says to have sabr. What is that example of sabr supposed to look like? Patience supposed to look like? Kindness, what does kindness look like? That is the example that we see in our Prophet and in our Imams. Allah says, yes, I'm going to give you a guide. This guide is going to be a perfect example of what you need to follow. You want to reach perfection? You want to reach excellence? Follow in these footsteps. Follow the footsteps of this Imam and this Prophet. This is why we believe that the Prophet is rahmatan lil alameen. He's mercy to the worlds. We have not sent you except with your mercy to the world. Your mercy is that you are proof for all of the people, and you are an example for them how to achieve happiness. You know, in the Constitution, one of your rights in this country is the pursuit of happiness. It's a right to pursue it, to chase it, however elusive it may be, to try to get to it. So why you find some people that are chasing money to get happy, some people are chasing people to get happy, some people, they have money, they have people around them, and they're still not happy. In this country, you have a right to continue to chase as much as you want, to pursue. Doesn't say you're guaranteed happiness, you just have a right to pursue it. Islam says, I'll tell you how to get happiness. I'll tell you the formula. I'll give you an example of a person who can show you what it means to be happy. How did they achieve happiness? How did they achieve success? I'll give you an excellent example of that. And that is the examples that we have in our religions. So it's a proof for us. Allah, we want to reach our perfection, our potential. Allah said, I'll give you a proof. Here's the proof. Here's an example for you. Everything that's in the Quran is manifest, and we see that in the Prophet. We see that in our Imams. It's not enough to have one thing and not to have the example of it. So this is why they go together. This is also one of the important dalils and an argument for why the Imam or the Prophet has to be ma'soom. Because if Allah says, okay, here's the Quran, here's a book, here's the manual, here's an example of a good person. But they're good, but sometimes they make some mistakes, sometimes they do good things, sometimes they do bad things. How will you learn? How would that be a proof for you? That's an example for you. It's the same reason and the same argument why Allah didn't send, instead of prophets, angels. Why didn't Allah just say, there's angels, take my Quran, take my book to the people, and give them the message? They wouldn't make any mistakes. They would be perfect. They would be beautiful. People might like them. Why didn't Allah send angels instead of prophets to be His hujjah, His proof? Well, you know what we would say? Because we look at this as an example of something that we can be, something that we can emulate, something that we can follow. And when we look at this prophet, when we look at an angel, and we say, well, this person doesn't have the same struggles that I have. They're not struggling with the same things that I'm being pulled from. They're already perfect, for example. They don't have an internal struggle. But what we believe is that every prophet, every imam, they were human beings, just like you and I. They made choices just like you and I, and their good choices is what led them to be who they were. Now, if you're tired, please say salawat. MashaAllah, so many tired people. All the not tired people, please say louder salawat. You know, in our fiqh, we have a way that we achieve our answers. And through these way that we achieve them, it explains that there's a way that something becomes a proof for us. Okay? Everything that the Prophet said becomes a proof for us. Everything that the Prophet did becomes a proof for us. Everything that happened in the presence of the Prophet and he did not say that it was wrong, that also even becomes a proof for us. So if the Prophet went to Hajj, if he prayed, that becomes a proof that that is something for us to do. That is a way for success. If the Prophet says something that this is a blessing or this is good, then that becomes something for us to do, for us to follow. If a prophet saw something happening in front of him and he didn't prevent it, two guys are wrestling, the Prophet of Allah sees them, he walks by, it means that wrestling is okay. Anything that happens in the presence of the Prophet and he doesn't say that this is wrong, because he is the proof and the example and the guide for us, then that itself also becomes a proof. And then our act also is a proof. Our internal guide is also a proof. Yes. در اصول فقه مبانی داریم. اگر میخوایم به نتیجه‌ای برسیم که فلان کار حجت است، روش هایی داره، کلام معصوم برای ما حجت است. اگر معصوم بفرماید که فلان کار صحیح است یا فلان کار حرام است، اون برای ما حجت میشه. رفتار معصوم نیز حجت است. اگر پیامبر اکرم چنین راه رفت، چنین حرکت کرد، چنین نماز خوند، این برای ما حجت میشه. و پس شد قول معصوم، فعل معصوم و تقریر معصوم، یعنی امری در حضور معصوم انجام بشود و معصوم آن رو چکار کنن؟ تایید بکنن. نگه که این کار اشتباهه، اشکال نداره، انجام شد در حضور معصوم و معصوم اون رو تایید بکنن، اون میشود حجت. حالا ما در دین دو تا قسمت داریم. یه سری مسائل مربوط به احکام هست، یه سری مسائل مربوط به عقاید. ما به طور کلی عرض کنیم اون چیزی که در احکام هست، یعنی من مراجعه میکنم به یک شخص فقیه و عالم و خبره و کسی که عادل و دارای شرایط مجتهد هست، بهش مراجعه میکنم. اگر ایشون به نتیجه رسید که این کار صحیح هست، من همون کار را میتونم انجام بدم. اگر گفت حرام است، انجام نمیدهم. پیروی میکنیم در مسائل عملی. توضیح مسائل کتاب درباره اعمال و کارکردار مختلف است. و زمان حیات، زمان عصر غیبت صغرا، امام زمان حجت که خودش حجت بود، حجتی رو قرار میداد به عنوان کسی که نماینده است. 4 تا نماینده خاص داشت. پس از اون زمانی که این نماینده خاص گذشت، نمایندگی امام زمان عام شد و هر کس که این شرایط رو داشت اون نماینده است که ما امروز اون شرایط رو همون شرایط مرجع تقلید می‌دونیم، که در واقع امروز مرجع تقلید حجت است برای شخصی که میخواد پیروی کنه از اسلام. این از سمت عملی. منتها راجع به اون بخش عقیدتی، آیا من میتوانم چون که این خبره و عالم و مجتهد و مرجع تقلید پیروی میکند از خداوند متعال، آیا من میتوانم بگم چون ایشون پیروی میکنن یا اعتقاد دارم به وجود خدا فنی است فلذا منم اعتقاد دارم، یا چون که ایشون اعتقاد دارم به روز قیامت پس من اعتقاد دارم؟ نه، نمیشه. پس در عقاید ایشان باید به یقین برسد، ایشان باید یه مدرک و حجت خودش رو پیدا کنند. حجت عقلی باید پیدا کنند، یعنی استدلال و دلیل باید برسد به این که این یک واقعیت است و این امر خیلی مهم است. الان عرض می‌کنم. For everything there's two parts of it. Either it's something that we do that's a practical part of our religion, or it's a part that we do that has to do with our beliefs. The practical part means the ahkam, the things we do. We have to pray. If we have doubts between the third and fourth rakat, what do we do? If we want to go to Hajj, what is necessary? What can we do? What can't we do? What are the conditions for marriage? What are the conditions for starting a business, for partnership, for renting, there's all of these things that are the do's and don'ts and the how-to. And these are things that if we are not an expert, then we follow an expert. Someone said, I don't want to follow an expert. I don't think that this expert knows. I don't think this manager or this alim knows. That's fine. It is. It just means that you have to become an expert then. You become an expert, then you don't need to follow an expert. Right? Now, in terms of all the do's and don'ts, we refer to someone who's an expert, who's a marja, who's a mujtahid. But in terms of the things that have to do with our beliefs, we don't refer to someone else. We have to reach a conviction about them. Does God exist? I have to know for sure that God exists. I have to reach a level of proof for myself that God exists. Is God just? I have to reach a proof that God is just. That there needs to be prophethood, etc., etc. I have to reach a proof for that. In today's world, what has happened more than anything is that people in today's generation, because they have inherited their religion, right? They were born Muslim, for example. So because they were born Muslim, or a lot of times what happens is when you inherit your religion or you grow up and you don't consciously go through this process, then you follow in your religion as opposed to reaching conviction about what you believe. So when a person is a Muslim, each person, especially young people, they need to have proof or reach proof of why they're Muslim. Even if they're born Muslim, they have to go to a process where they know for sure and understand why they themselves are Muslim. You read lots of places in the Quran that talks about people who, when the prophets would tell them, hey, don't worship idols, they say, hey, we're doing what our fathers did. You're trying to stop us from doing our old ways of what our fathers did. They just inherited and followed blindly. Islam is so confident as a religion that it says that you should ask those questions. There's no tough questions. Sometimes what happens is, parents tell their children, you should pray. You should go to masjid. You should listen to Quran. Or you should do these good deeds. And that's very good. And it's very true. There lies a problem in this. The problem lies in that this is for the person who has conviction that this is the right religion, that this is the right book, that they're following the right imam, then that makes sense. I give you a naqli, a written, the word of the Prophet as an example. The Prophet said this, and so you should do this. The Quran says this, and so you should do this. But it's the same as when you're dealing with someone, or similar to when you're dealing with someone who is not even Muslim. You can't use arguments from the Quran and from the Hadith to prove Islam. You have to start with intellectual arguments, logical arguments. If a person reached the point where they understand, yes, there has to be a God. Yes, there has to be a prophet. Yes, the Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet. Then I accept his book. Then whatever's in the book, I have to accept. Whatever it says. What happens in today's generation is the youth are not going through the process of conviction of their religion, of making sure that they are sure that they're Muslim, and that they know and they have confidence in what they believe. And sometimes they have questions. Why is this like this? Why do we do this? Because we're living in a society that's very different maybe in some ways, from what our religious values are. So when it's different, you might find someone asking, especially young people, why this and why that? So the answer cannot be to this question, don't ask the question, or you should do so, do as I say, just do it because we're Muslim. It can't be that. We need to have proofs in order to reach a point where we accept our religion wholly. Because there's a time when a person has confidence in their religion, then they have a desire to pray. They have a desire to fast. They have a love for these acts of worship that we want to encourage because they've accepted the belief. So it's about creating a conviction and a proof in the beliefs. I'm coming to the closing point, inshallah, and hopefully this will be all beneficial for all of us. But just bear with me for the last, coming to the last point, inshallah, with one more loud salawat. عرض کردیم که برای رسیدن به اون مسائل عقیدتی مخصوصاً برای نسل جوان بسیار بسیار حائز اهمیت است که اونها همون مطالعات و با یقین به دین اسلام برسن. هرچند که کسی مسلمان به دنیا بیاد، شایدم این دلیل بیشتری است برای اینکه انسان باید خودش هم به این نتیجه برسد که این دین اینقدر ارزش داره. یادی است که کسی مسلمان خدمت جمعی از دانشجوهای یهودی بودن. پرسیدم از این جمع، مدرسه یهودی بود البته، پرسیدم از این جمع شاگردا چند تا شماها یهودی هستین؟ همه دستشون رو بلند کرد. گفتم چند تا از شماها در قرآن رو تا حالا مطالعه کردید؟ ولی گزارا هیچ کس دستش رو بلند نکرد. به این معناست که و سوالاتی هم که میپرسیدن نشونه این بود که تا حالا اصلا باز نکرده بودن قرآن هیچ باز نکرده بودن. جمعی از چند هفته پیش مسیحای توی خونه سالمندان که اکثرا یا مسیحی بودن یا یهودی، درباره اسلام اومدیم صحبت کنیم. اونا همه از اونا همین سوال رو کردن. چند تا شماها مثلا قرآن رو تا حالا مطالعه کرد؟ یک نفر، دو نفر. ببینید تو جمع مسلمان‌های خودمون همین سوال رو هم مطرح بکن و مطرح کردم توی جمع جوانان. چند تا شماها قرآن رو کامل مطالعه کردیم؟ بالاخره کتاب شماست. چند نفر. بدون مطالعات عمیق و درک دین نمیتونیم به یقین برسیم، مطمئن باشیم. البته تو مرحله اول که عرض کردیم بحث اعتقادات، اعتقاد به خدا، اعتقاد به روز قیامت و اعتقاد به عدل الهی، نیاز هست که انسان به استدلال به اون برسه. نسل امروز بعضی وقتا بهشون گفته میشه نماز بخون، زکات بده، مجلس برو، اینا همه کارهای خوب هستن، ولی این کار خوب ارزش داره برای کسی که به اون درجه رسیده که درک میکنه که این کار خوب است، که این دین درست است. و ما توی جامعه زندگی میکنیم که الان و امروز هرچی تو رسانه ها و جو مثبتی نسبت به اسلام نیست. پس جوونی که وارد این جامعه میشه و مدرسه میره یا سر کار میره و محیط غیر اسلامی دور تا دورشه، اگر مثبت نباشه نسبت به اسلام، چطور انتظار داریم که اون انگیزه و اون یقین نسبت به اسلام رو داشته باشه؟ پس اگر اون یقین و مسئله عقیدتی حل نشد، برو نماز بخون، اون خطبه رو گوش بده، معنا نداره. چه دلیلی داره؟ چه ارزشی داره این اون مجلس یا اون قرآن یا خوندنش یا بیدار شدن برای نماز اول وقت یا نماز شب ارزش پیدا میکند زمانی که این دین ارزش داره، زمانی که برای من ثابت شده و این دین برای من حجت شده و من با مدرک به این رسیدم که این حق است. اعتماد به نفس و اعتماد به این دین پیدا میکنم. مسئله در این است. ما امروز اجازه دادیم که رسانه‌های مختلف مفسر و بیانگر دین اسلام باشه. کانال‌های اخبار و تلویزیون با اون یه گفته‌هایی که حالا دور از حقیقت است، ولی این گفته‌ها و این کل این جو اجتماعی تأثیر دارد روی ذهن انسان، چه مسلمان چه غیر مسلمان. خیلی سر و کار دارم توی برنامه‌های بین مذاهب با یهودی‌ها و مسیحی‌ها و غیر مسلمان‌ها فرصت زیادی پیش میاد که صحبت‌های مختلف بشه، سوالاتی بپرسن، همچنان با جوانان، با مسلمانان، با کمیونیتی‌های خودمون. عجیب هست تاثیرگذار رسانه‌ها، عجیب قوی هست. در یک کلاس یک جوان غیر مسلمان سوال کرد که شما نظرتون درباره جهاد چی هست؟ I was in a class and one of the students asked me, what do you think about jihad? Actually, they said, what do you think about jihad? And I said, do you think that's good? Should we do jihad? I said, I do jihad every day. What? Let me decide, as a Muslim who's confident in my religion, what is the definition of this term? I'm not going to let decide or play into the hands of what some media has decided the term is supposed to mean. Let me decide. Yes, I do jihad all the time. Oh my goodness, scary. So I was giving them a couple of examples. I said, I have a friend, someone that I know, they were traveling to a country, and they, sometimes when your name is a Muslim name, Homeland Security has their random selection just for you, and they want to check you and check your things, and so they did, and they were going through his things. They saw a book. I said, what's this? I said, it's my akhlaq book. Akhlaq, it's my, ethics, morals. This is the Great Jihad, called Supervisor. It says the Great Jihad. It's scary. What is this all about? Are you planning to do jihad? I'm working on it. Trying? Well, really, it means, he explained to them. I would have probably been more sarcastic, but he was a nice guy. He explained to them, no, this just means that it's the great jihad means that I'm working on myself. I have to be more patient, not have jealousy, not have envy, to be more of a sincere human being. The great jihad means that I work on my ego, myself as a human being, to be a better human being in society. Well, that can't be what jihad is. Why can't it be? Because I've watched enough news and media that I've been conditioned to think this is what it means. So it can't mean something else. This is the power of media. You know, in this, I was explaining to them about the great jihad, and I said, yes, I have to explain to you about the small jihad as well. As the small jihad does mean that you take arms and you go and you fight against the bad guys. Or you go to war. It's a type of war. In its conditions, when it's commanded to, some scholars say only in the time of the Masum, or if the representative, or if the Maraji say also. And so I said, but can I give you an example of that? Let me give you an example of what the small jihad is. So I explained to you what the big jihad is. Let me explain to you what the small jihad is as well. Actually, one other thing, it used to be, in New York, they used to run a campaign on buses. They used to say, my jihad is such and such. For example, my jihad is helping the homeless. My jihad is, because they were trying to change the way the word was being used. There's a Muslim group, they were trying to change this, so they would advertise this, and it was catching on, a lot of places, at least in New York City, I believe it was. So I got to the point about what is the small jihad. Yes, it does mean war. And I said, can I give you an example? Sure. I said, do you know, you've heard of ISIS? Yes. I said, do you know that Muslim scholars have given a decree that it's a jihad to fight against ISIS? That is jihad. That Muslims, even regular people, imagine a housewife is taking up arms and protecting themselves and their country against terrorists. Yes, that is what Muslims do. Yes, we do believe in that. And we are on the front lines before Putin, before Russia, before America, before anybody. There's people who are in that country, majority Muslim, they're fighting on the front lines against ISIS. They were doing jihad. Yes, is that scary to you now? No, that's a very good thing. Okay. So let's redefine these terms for ourselves. Because if we leave this important part, the proof about the religion, it needs to be learned. If it's just up to the media to teach it, then it's going to teach something else. And this next generation, they have to have conviction. But they're affected by these things. In California, that shooting was tragic. It's tragic. Muslims raised $100,000. $20,000 in 24 hours didn't go by. Muslims raised, and to the families of the victims. That didn't get so much media coverage. That didn't affect people all around necessarily as much. The very first news report was that there were 3 white men in military uniforms. So I didn't make it up. This is the exact report by the Los Angeles News, by several other news stations, and they changed the report after a few hours. Oh no. The eyewitness report of 3 white men in military uniforms escaping in an SUV, went out the window. We conveniently found 2 dead Muslims who did some kind of crazy things, and they were terrorists. So, when we talk about someone, the imam, being hujjat for all of people, when we speak to people, we have to give them the understanding and the importance of having proof in general. Speak with proof about anything, about anyone. No Muslim likes for their religion to be said something negative about it. No Muslim likes when people say negative things about Islam. So we should actually speak with proof. Just like, for example, no one likes something negative to be said about them. No one wants to be told that you did this for a wrong reason, you stole or you lied, no one wants to be an accusation. One of the biggest tragedies in the Muslim community is that someone can come, say to someone, this person did this. And they'll accept it blindly without asking any questions, without saying, where is your proof? So much importance about proof in all of the whole creation and all of existence, yet we accept things without any proof. When things happened and Islam was put in a bad light, or tried to be put in a bad light, Muslims were offended. They rushed to give donations. Very good thing. $100,000 more that Muslims alone raised for these victims, showing what Islam is. That's amazing. And they would like people to say, hey, you should have proof when you talk about these negative things. These people are Muslims. Every Muslim has said, ISIS is not a part of Islam. They have nothing to do with Islam. And we would like people to look at them with proof. Where's the proof? You know the famous journalist? He was a French journalist. He spent 10 months in an ISIS camp. And do you know what he said? He said they did not have a Quran. They did not have a Quran. You're going to establish the Islamic State, but you don't read the Quran? You're an extremist Muslim, but you don't even pray or read the Quran? I mean, it told the whole story. I can't remember his name, but he's a French journalist. You can Google him. Very interesting. And we would like that this kind of evidence and proof be known to everybody. Speak with evidence and proof. And this goes to the greater level. It goes to the personal level, where Muslims and relationships, sometimes things happen and accusations are made. You should say to whoever makes an accusation, do you have proof? Do you have proof for this statement? When people made accusations against the Imams would provide them with proof. So hujjat is not something that's just important for us to look at as a savior for humanity. It's important to us to look at it in a social aspect. It's important also for us to look at in an individual aspect as well. So So in closing, I want to say that it's very important. It's very extremely important that we ourselves, we take steps and measures to share the proof of the salvation of humanity. That proof is Islam, but we have to share that proof in a way that's positive, and we have to share it with proof and with evidence. And by doing so, we've done a service to humanity. The last thing that I will mention is that when these events that are tragic happen in the world, when people claim that they have anything to do with Islam, when that claim is there, obviously we want there to be proof. There's no doubt. Otherwise, we can't believe that that has anything to do with Islam. But more than that, Islam is not for Muslims alone, it's a solution for humanity. How can I show that it's a solution for humanity? If you noticed, when the incidents happened in California or in Paris or any other time, there were so many Muslims that spoke out and condemned those incidents. This is the problem. That's the right thing to do, to condemn. But there lies a problem if I don't condemn all injustice. If I only condemn when someone is called Muslim and I feel defensive, then I haven't solved anything. I'm not showing people that Islam is a solution for humanity. I'm showing people that I'm defensive and I want to defend Islam because I don't want you to think that I'm a terrorist. So I need to explain to you, no, I'm not. No, Islam is a voice of justice against all injustice. So when we see an instance, any instance of oppression or injustice, Islam has to have a voice about that. Not just when someone is trying to make Islam look bad or defame the religion of Islam. So that becomes a responsibility upon all of the people who follow the Hujjah of our time, inshallah. Inshallah, I ask you that you keep in your prayers and your du'as all of those people who have become victims of senseless violence and any kind of act which is against our religion, and that we ask each and every one of you to be a proof to everyone who's around you. Affect them by sharing how Islam is the solution to the world, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.